A rusted diner, a flickering sign. A woman stands alone behind the counter, hands cracked from years of work, eyes tired but kind. Outside, a stray dog watches through the glass, thin, trembling, but still wagging its tail. She opens the door. "Come in, buddy." Two lives, both hungry for warmth. The town had forgotten this place. Just a ruin with peeling paint and ghosts of laughter. But inside, something stirs, a heartbeat beneath the dust, a secret waiting 40 years to be found. Across the street, a black SUV idles. A man in a suit watches through tinted glass, waiting for her to fail. He doesn't believe in grace. She doesn't believe in giving up. And what happens next? A key, a diner, and a woman's faith will remind you that God's miracles don't always come from heaven. Sometimes, they're baked into biscuits and served with love. Before we begin, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. And if you believe no kindness is ever wasted and no miracle is too small, hit subscribe, because this story might just make you believe again. Chapter 1. Bluebird Diner, $17 and a flicker of hope. The morning sun over Rust Creek was pale and cold, the kind that made even the dust look tired. Sarah Miller stood outside her small rental duplex, her breath rising like smoke in the air. She was 47, tall but slightly stooped from years of cleaning other people's messes, her hands rough, her knuckles swollen from work. Her auburn hair, once thick and shining, was now streaked with gray, usually tied back in a loose bun that spoke more of necessity than vanity. Her skin had the weathered softness of someone who had faced both mountain winters and human disappointments. Sarah worked part-time at the Rust Creek Laundry and occasionally at a motel on the edge of town, scrubbing bathrooms until her knees went numb. Her landlord, a man who smiled only when collecting rent, had taped a yellow envelope to her door. She didn't open it right away. She already knew what it said. Her world was small but not without life. Inside the duplex, her kettle whistled, and a faded radio hummed with an old country song. That was when she saw him, the dog. A small, muddy shape curled near the garbage bins, ribs showing through dirty fur. He lifted his head, revealing warm brown eyes too intelligent to belong to something broken. Sarah sighed, crouching down, her voice gentle. "Hey there, buddy." The dog wagged his tail weakly, as if testing whether kindness was real. She gave him the last piece of toast she had. When he licked her hand, something inside her thawed. "Buddy," she said again, smiling at her own foolishness. "That's your name now?" Later that evening, after work, Sarah sat at the old laptop her neighbor's son had fixed for her, bills stacked beside her like paper mountains. She had $73 left in her account after rent and a looming car repair. She told herself she'd look for extra cleaning jobs, but instead she found herself drifting through online listings. Used furniture, cheap tools, even foreclosure auctions. That's when one title caught her eye. Bluebird Diner, abandoned property auction. Starting bid, $17. She blinked. $17? That couldn't be right. The photo showed a squat two-story building at the corner of Main and Cedar. The paint peeled like dry bark, the sign faded but still legible. Bluebird Diner, a relic of another era. As is, the description read, no inspection. Buyer assumes responsibility for structure and land. Taxes current. Sarah chuckled softly. "Who in their right mind?" she whispered, but something about it tugged at her. Maybe it was the bluebird painted on the sign, a little bird mid-flight, wings spread wide even as the wood cracked around it. Buddy rested his head on her knee, and she absently scratched behind his ear. "What do you think, Bud? Should we buy a diner?" His tail thumped once, as if agreeing. Sarah looked again at the photo. The diner stood alone against a backdrop of hills and empty sky, forgotten but still standing. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, curiosity mixed with the faintest trace of hope. It was ridiculous, of course. She didn't have money to gamble, but the thought wouldn't leave her. The auction was online, ending in less than 2 hours. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. $17, she murmured. Less than a tank of gas. She tried to imagine what her late mother would say. A woman who'd believed hard work solved everything until it didn't. Don't be foolish, Sarah. Dreams don't fix leaky roofs. But maybe, Sarah thought, sometimes foolishness was all you had left. She clicked register. The confirmation ping made her heart race. The bidding page was empty. No one else had entered. She waited, breath shallow, glancing at the clock every few minutes. 10 minutes left. 5, 2. Then, you won the auction. She laughed aloud, half disbelief, half panic. Buddy barked as if joining the celebration. Well, boy, she said, I just bought us a diner. The next morning, Sarah borrowed her friend's rusty Ford pickup and drove out to see her new property. The road wound past the sawmill and up a small rise until the diner came into view. It looked worse than the photo. The front door hung off its hinges, one window boarded, another shattered. The roof sagged in the middle, and the old neon sign dangled by a single wire. Grass and weeds choked the parking lot, and an old shopping cart lay half buried in the gravel. Sarah climbed out of the truck, tucking her coat tighter against the chill. Buddy jumped out behind her, sniffing everything with reckless joy. She stood there, staring, half wanting to laugh, half to cry. What had she done? The wind whistled through the cracks, carrying a faint smell of rust and dust. Still, there was something about it, a strange familiarity, as if the place had been waiting. Guess this is home now, she said softly. Buddy barked once, tail wagging. Inside, the air was thick with mold and memory. Broken booths, shattered plates, a clock stopped at 3:47. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, turning dust into tiny drifting stars. Sarah ran her hand along the counter, feeling grooves left by decades of coffee cups and elbows. You were somebody's dream once, she murmured. Maybe you still are. Then Buddy barked again, this time sharply, urgent. Sarah turned. He stood by the corner of the kitchen, pawing at a loose floor tile. She frowned. What are you up to, boy? Kneeling down, she pushed the tile aside. Underneath, the wood looked different, newer, like it had been replaced at some point. She tapped it, hollow. Her pulse quickened. What the hell? She whispered, reaching for the small crowbar she'd brought. The board creaked as it lifted, revealing a narrow space below. Something metallic glinted in the shadows. Buddy wagged, his tail whining softly. Sarah leaned closer, the light from the broken window catching the edge of what looked like... She froze. That can't be right, she breathed. And then, for the first time in a very long while, she smiled. Not the tired, polite smile she gave customers, but something deeper, almost childlike. Because whatever it was down there, it didn't belong in an abandoned diner. Chapter 2. Days of rust and borrowed sunlight. The next morning, the frost still clung to the grass behind the Bluebird diner, turning every weed into silver. Sarah stood at the threshold, wrapped in an oversized denim jacket that had seen better years. Her hair was messy, her hands aching from prying open boards and sweeping up glass. But she felt something fierce moving inside her, the stubborn will that had once made her survive 2 jobs and a broken marriage. Buddy trotted behind her, tail high, nose twitching at the scent of something wild in the wind. Inside, the diner looked like a battlefield between time and decay. The counter was warped, one of the red vinyl stools lay on its side, its stuffing spilling out like snow. Sarah grabbed a broom and began sweeping. The sound echoed against the cracked pulls like a heartbeat returning after years of silence. By noon, a truck rumbled past and slowed down. A man leaned out the window, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded plaid shirt and a trucker cap. His face was tanned and deeply lined, his gray beard trimmed short but uneven, like a man who didn't care much for mirrors. You the one who bought this wreck? He asked, his voice gravelly. Yeah, Sarah replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. That'd be me? He chuckled. Name's Cal Jenkins. I run the hardware store down the road. You're gonna need more than elbow grease to fix this place. He climbed down from the truck, moving with the slow, careful gait of someone who had spent a lifetime lifting heavy things. Used to eat here back in the day, Cal said, looking through the doorway. My old man brought me once a week for pancakes. Best damn coffee in Rust Creek. He paused, eyes softening. Shame what happened after Earl passed. Earl? Sarah asked. Earl Thompson. Owned the diner. Died suddenly in 71. Heart attack, I think. Place shut down after that. Nobody touched it since. Cal shrugged. Guess you got yourself a ghost kitchen now. He grinned, showing a missing tooth, then offered her a small can of nails. On the house, for luck. Sarah smiled, surprised by the gesture. Thanks, Cal. Don't thank me yet, he said, chuckling. Once you start scraping that floor, you'll wish you'd burned the place down instead. When he left, Sarah looked at the diner differently. Every nail, every stain carried someone's story. She worked until the light began to fade, stacking broken chairs, collecting bits of silverware, throwing out the shattered pieces of what used to be life. Buddy followed her every step, sometimes sneezing at the dust, sometimes chasing a mouse that had long called the diner home. On the third day, Sarah discovered the loose floorboard again, the one where the metallic glint had teased her curiosity. She fetched a small crowbar and carefully pried open more of the floor around it. Beneath the hollow space lay a thin layer of dirt and an old tin box, rusted at the corners but still intact. The latch was brittle, breaking off easily under pressure. Inside, she found folded papers wrapped in oilcloth, a letter, a small key, and a faded postcard with a painted bluebird flying over a sunrise. On the back, someone had written in neat cursive, "When your hands are full, but your heart is empty, look where kindness once fed the hungry." The handwriting was old-fashioned, elegant but trembling. The letter inside was too fragile to unfold completely without tearing, but one line caught her eye. "To whoever finds this, the Bluebird was never just a diner. It was a promise kept between friends." Sarah held the postcard in both hands, feeling a strange mix of warmth and unease. "Buddy," she whispered, "what did we just find?" She took the key and drove into town the next morning. Rust Creek was small. One main street, 3 stop signs, a handful of stores that had seen better days. She stopped at the Rust Creek Bank, a squat brick building with dusty windows and a brass sign that hadn't been polished in years. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and old perfume. The teller at the counter was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and silver hair pinned neatly under a scarf. Her name tag read Patricia Lee. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked, smiling politely. Sarah handed her the key and the postcard. "I found this under the floor of the old Bluebird diner. Thought maybe it belonged to a safe deposit box." Patricia examined the key, frowning slightly. "That's an old one, all right. Haven't seen this style in decades." She turned and disappeared into the back, leaving Sarah tapping her fingers nervously on the counter. After a few minutes, Patricia returned, eyes wide. "Well, I'll be," she murmured. "Box number 317. It's still registered. Name says Earl Thompson, the diner's owner." Sarah blinked. "It's still active?" Patricia nodded slowly. "Technically dormant, but not claimed. You'd need proof of property ownership before we can open it. But," she hesitated, lowering her voice, "if you're the new owner of the Bluebird, that might count. I can check with the branch manager." Sarah felt her heart thudding. "Please do." As Patricia left again, Buddy whined softly, curling at Sarah's feet. When Patricia came back, she was carrying an old file folder. "You're in luck," she said with a conspiratorial smile. "Legally, you're the owner of the land and all its contents. That includes what's stored under its name. Earl's box is yours to open." Sarah hesitated. "Can I open it now?" Patricia nodded. "If you're ready." The vault was cool and silent. Rows of boxes lined the wall like forgotten memories. Patricia inserted the key, turning it until a soft click echoed in the quiet. Inside the box lay another envelope, thicker than she expected, bound with a red ribbon. Sarah lifted it with trembling hands. Patricia smiled. "Whatever it is, looks like it's been waiting a long time." Outside, the wind had picked up. The sign of the diner creaked faintly in the distance, and somewhere behind her, Buddy barked twice. Short, sharp, like a warning. Sarah turned around, frowning, the envelope still clutched against her chest. Through the window, she thought she saw someone standing across the street, a man in a long coat, watching her. But when she blinked, he was gone. And for the first time, she felt that the Bluebird Diner wasn't quite as empty as she'd believed. Chapter 3. The Silent Vault and the Noise of Greed. When Sarah returned to the diner that evening, the Senate had sunk behind the Rust Creek hills, leaving the sky streaked with a bruised violet glow. The old sign above the Bluebird Diner groaned in the wind, and Buddy whined softly as they entered. Sarah sat at one of the cracked vinyl booths, staring at the red-ribboned envelope she had retrieved from the bank vault. The paper inside was brittle and smelled faintly of tobacco and lemon oil. She hesitated before unfolding it. Inside were handwritten ledgers, stamped certificates, and a letter from Earl Thompson, dated June 1971, the week before his death. "This diner began as a refuge for those who had nothing," the letter read. "If you are reading this, then fate has found you worthy of its keeping. The Bluebird Fund was meant for Rust Creek, for the hands that built this town and were forgotten." Sarah's throat tightened. The papers were unmistakable. Series E government bonds, worth far more now than when purchased. Beneath them lay a bound ledger marked Bluebird Community Fund. The diner hadn't just been a business. It was once a hidden cooperative fund for the mill workers during the mining collapse of the 60s. The next morning, Sarah met Alma Rodriguez, a local attorney recommended by Patricia. Alma was in her mid-40s, short and compact with dark curly hair that escaped her bun in soft strands. Her hazel eyes were sharp but not unkind, and she spoke in a tone that balanced firmness with empathy. She had been raised in a working-class family in Albuquerque, and after a bad divorce and a lost lawsuit early in her career, she had come to Rust Creek seeking quieter work, the kind where law still felt human. Sitting in her small office filled with case files and a faint smell of coffee, Alma examined the papers carefully. "These are legitimate," she said finally, looking up. Earl Thompson wasn't just running a diner. He was safeguarding money for his workers, probably to protect it from creditors or taxes back then. Sarah frowned. "So, what happens now?" Alma leaned back. "If you legally own the property, you may also own what's attached to it. But since this was a community fund, we'll need to verify if there were surviving contributors or heirs." Sarah exhaled slowly. "I don't want to steal from anyone, Alma. I just want to do what's right." Alma smiled faintly. "That's a good start. Not many people would say that." 2 weeks later, word had spread. Rust Creek was small, and gossip moved faster than wind. When Sarah arrived at the diner one morning, a sleek black SUV was parked out front. A man in an expensive suit leaned against it, talking on his phone. He was tall, mid-50s, with slicked-back silver hair and the kind of tan skin that suggested country clubs, not sunlight. His name was Jonathan Pierce, a real estate developer from Denver known for buying decayed small-town properties and flipping them into boutique resorts. His handshake was firm, his smile too polished. "Ms. Miller," he greeted her, his tone syrupy. "I hear you've stumbled onto quite the treasure. Congratulations." Sarah crossed her arms. "I'm not sure what you mean." Jonathan chuckled. "Come now. Everyone's heard about the Bluebird bonds. You've got yourself a fortune sitting in that dusty place. Let me make you an offer. I'll take the diner off your hands for, let's say, $200,000. Cash." Sarah blinked. 200? That's not even... "A generous deal," he interrupted smoothly. "The place is falling apart. You'd be lucky to get 50 for the land alone. I'm doing you a favor." His smile tightened. "Otherwise, I might be forced to question whether those funds were ever truly yours to claim." Buddy growled softly beside her, fur bristling. Sarah held his leash tighter. "You can question whatever you like," she said quietly, "but I'm not selling." Jonathan's jaw flexed, but he kept his smile. "You'll change your mind," he said, turning back to his car. "Rust Creek always sells, eventually." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The weight of the bonds and the diner pressed on her like ghosts whispering in the walls. She met Alma the next morning, explaining the encounter. Alma wasn't surprised. "Pierce's name comes up a lot in property disputes," she said. "He's made a career out of buying desperation. Don't talk to him again without me present." Together, they filed a motion in county court to formally verify ownership of the Bluebird Fund. It wasn't easy. Old laws, missing heirs, and bureaucratic tangles made every step a fight. When the hearing finally came, the courtroom was nearly empty except for Sarah, Alma, and Jonathan Pierce with his expensive lawyer. The judge, Eleanor Briggs, was a woman in her 60s with sharp gray eyes and a voice that commanded quiet. She had grown up in Rust Creek herself, though she rarely let personal feelings cloud her rulings. Jonathan's attorney argued that since the Bluebird Fund had been communal, Sarah could not claim it. Alma countered that Earl Thompson's letter named the keeper of the diner as the fund's guardian, and Sarah had lawfully inherited that title by purchase. After 3 tense hours, Judge Briggs spoke. "The court recognizes Ms. Sarah Miller as the lawful trustee of the Bluebird Community Fund, under the condition that its proceeds be used for the public good." She struck her gavel once. "This hearing is closed." Outside, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall. Sarah stood silently, her breath fogging in the air. Alma grinned, shaking her hand. "Congratulations, trustee. You just inherited a miracle and a responsibility." Sarah smiled faintly. "I guess miracles don't come cheap." Across the street, Jonathan Pierce watched them, face unreadable. Then he turned away, muttering something to his driver. And somewhere inside the old diner, the loose window creaked again, like the sigh of a house that knew it had been seen, at last. Chapter 4. Bluebird Commons, Breakfast That Saved a Town. Winter gave way slowly in Rust Creek, as if reluctant to leave. By March, the snow had melted into mud, and the hillsides shone with the pale green of new grass. Sarah stood outside the diner, now reborn under a new sign, Bluebird Commons. The letters were hand-painted in deep blue, and beneath them, a small carving of a bird in flight. The once sagging roof gleamed with new tin, and the windows, freshly washed, reflected the sky. It wasn't perfect. The floorboards still creaked, and the smell of old grease sometimes drifted from the walls, but it was alive again, like a heart that had remembered how to beat. Inside, the hum of voices filled the air. A handful of volunteers moved between tables, polishing utensils and stacking dishes. Among them was Tommy Grant, a 17-year-old with shaggy blonde hair and a permanent nervous smile. He had dropped out of high school after his father's logging accident, working odd jobs to help his family. When Sarah first met him, he was stealing day-old bread behind the grocery store. Now, he was learning how to cook eggs without burning them. Less heat, more patience, Sarah told him, guiding his hand away from the flame. Tommy grinned sheepishly. Patience ain't exactly my thing. Then we'll make it your thing, she said, smiling. Buddy, now clean and well-fed, lay by the door wearing a red bandana with the diner's name embroidered on it. He was the unofficial greeter, tail wagging at every customer. The smell of pancakes and bacon drifted through the air, mingling with laughter, something Rust Creek hadn't heard much of in years. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and turned toward the kitchen, where Lydia Hart, a sturdy woman in her early 60s with silver curls and a laugh that filled the room, stirred a pot of soup. Lyden had once run the school cafeteria before budget cuts closed it down. "This smells like my mama's kitchen," Sarah said. Lydia winked. "Then we're doing it right." They worked together not for profit but for purpose. Meals were paid by choice. People gave what they could, and if they couldn't, they washed dishes or served coffee. The Bluebird Fund covered costs, but Sarah refused to call it charity. "It's a table," she said in her opening speech. "Everyone deserves a seat." Then came the storm. It began with rain, soft at first, then relentless. The creek that gave the town its name began to rise, turning brown and angry. By midnight, the water had flooded the lower streets. Sarah and Buddy watched from the diner window as sirens echoed through the night. The next morning, families came to Bluebird Commons seeking warmth and food. Without hesitation, Sarah and her small crew turned the diner into a relief kitchen. Lydia coordinated meals while Tommy hauled sandbags with the firefighters. The old coffee urn ran non-stop. Sarah moved like a woman possessed, cooking, comforting, handing out blankets she had stored just in case. The local sheriff, Frank Dawes, stopped by around noon. He was a heavy-set man in his late 50s, with deep-set eyes and a mustache that made him look sterner than he really was. "You're turning this place into Command Central," he said, half smiling. Sarah shrugged. "Somebody's got to feed them." Frank nodded, then lowered his voice. "You're doing good work here, Sarah. Real good." His words warmed her more than the coffee. By the third day, the flood began to recede, leaving behind mud, wreckage, and exhaustion. Sarah's muscles ached, her hair smelled of smoke and sweat, but when she looked at the faces eating quietly at her tables, the mill workers, the kids, the old widows, she felt something close to peace. When the county relief truck finally arrived, a local reporter named Evan Ross appeared with a camera. He was young, maybe 28, with dark hair and sharp features softened by curiosity. "Mind if I get your story, Ms. Miller?" he asked. Sarah frowned, wiping her hands. "It's not much of a story. Feeding half the town for 3 days straight sounds like one to me." He snapped a photo of Sarah handing a bowl of stew to a child, Buddy sitting loyally beside her. The image would later appear on local news, captioned, "The Diner That Refused to Close." After the flood, donations began to trickle in from nearby towns. Former residents of Rust Creek sent letters and checks. Alma helped Sarah set up a proper nonprofit trust, ensuring every dollar went back into the community. Within months, Bluebird Commons expanded into training programs, teaching cooking, carpentry, and accounting to those who had lost their jobs. Tommy earned his GED with Lydia's help, and the first Bluebird Scholarship was awarded to a young girl who dreamed of becoming a nurse. One afternoon, as sunlight slanted through the clean diner windows, Sarah stood outside watching children chase each other around the parking lot. The laughter, the smell of warm bread, the hum of life. It all felt unreal. Alma joined her, arms folded, smiling. "You've done it," she said. Sarah shook her head. "We've done it." Buddy barked once, chasing after the kids. Sarah laughed, then glanced toward the hill where the old Bluebird sign caught the late light. For the first time in years, Rust Creek looked alive. But as the wind shifted, Sarah caught sight of something across the road. A sleek black SUV, engine idling. A familiar figure leaned against it, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Jonathan Pierce. He watched her for a long moment, then raised his cup of coffee in a mocking toast before driving away. Sarah's smile faded, but only slightly. She whispered, "Not today, Pierce. Not this time." Then she turned back toward the diner, where the smell of pancakes promised another beginning. Chapter 5. The House of the Bluebird. Spring arrived with a warmth that felt almost shy, as if Rust Creek itself was relearning how to breathe after years of holding its breath. The hillsides bloomed with wild daisies, and the creek, once swollen with floodwater, now ran clear again, singing softly through the valley. Sarah Miller stood outside Bluebird Commons, her apron dusted with flour, her auburn hair tied loosely behind her neck. The fine lines on her face seemed softer these days, not because life had grown easier, but because she'd finally stopped fighting it. Beside her, Buddy stretched lazily in a patch of sunlight, tail flicking, the red bandana around his neck faded but proud. The diner had become the heartbeat of Rust Creek. People came not only to eat, but to talk, to find work, to learn something new. A mural now covered one wall, a giant bluebird soaring above painted fields of wheat, surrounded by handprints of children who had helped paint it. Every morning, Sarah lit the sign herself, whispering, "Let's make today count." It was a Monday when he returned. Jonathan Pierce's black SUV pulled into the lot with the quiet menace of something that had learned patience. He stepped out dressed in a tailored gray suit, his silver hair glinting in the sun. But this time, the sharp arrogance in his posture was tempered, not by humility, perhaps, but by strategy. "Ms. Miller," he greeted, his voice smooth as ever. "You look well. The place looks thriving." Sarah crossed her arms. "We're managing." Jonathan smiled faintly. "I'm sure you are. That's why I'm here with a new offer, a serious one this time." He handed her a folder embossed with the seal of Pierce Development Group. Inside was a typed proposal, $1.2 million for the property and rights to the Bluebird name. "You could live comfortably for the rest of your life," he said. "Retire, travel, let someone else carry the burden." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "It's not a burden," she said quietly. "It's a promise." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You think this little charity of yours will survive forever? You can't run on goodwill and nostalgia." Sarah smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised what survives here." Buddy barked once, as if in agreement. Jonathan exhaled, adjusting his cufflinks. "Well," he said, "I can't say you weren't warned." He turned, pausing by his car. "You know, Ms. Miller, even birds need to fly away sometime." Sarah replied without looking at him, "This one already has." When he left, Sarah stood for a while, the folder still in her hand. She could feel the weight of it, the ease it promised. But when she looked at the diner, at the kids laughing through the open door, at Lydia serving pie to the sheriff, and at Tommy teaching a younger boy how to flip a pancake, she knew there was no sum that could buy what they'd built. That evening, as the sun dipped low, a bus pulled into town. From it stepped a woman in her late 20s, tall, slender, with chestnut hair and eyes like Sarah's, but younger, sharper. Emily Miller, Sarah's daughter. She wore a simple denim jacket and carried a worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. Years had passed since they had last spoken. Their relationship had fractured when Emily left for college, chasing dreams her mother couldn't afford to share. The silence that followed had stretched too long, filled with guilt on both sides. Emily stood in the doorway, hesitating as she took in the diner. The lights, the chatter, the smell of cinnamon and coffee. "Mom," she said softly. Sarah froze, the tray in her hands trembling slightly. "Emily?" The word came out like a prayer. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Sarah set down the tray and crossed the room. They met halfway, embracing tightly. Sarah felt the years melt away, the anger, the distance, leaving only the ache of love. Emily pulled back, smiling through tears. "I saw the news. I had to see it for myself. You did all this." Sarah shook her head. "No, honey. We did this. All of us." Over the next few weeks, Emily helped at the diner, serving, cleaning, laughing with Lydia and Tommy as if she'd always belonged. She had her mother's quiet stubbornness and her father's way of finding light, even in heavy places. One afternoon, as they closed up, she said, "You know, this isn't just a diner, Mom. It's a heartbeat." Sarah smiled. "Then I guess we'd better keep it beating." With Alma's help, Sarah established the Bluebird Perpetual Trust, ensuring that the diner, scholarships, and community fund would exist long after she was gone. At the founding ceremony, the townspeople gathered, workers, teachers, children, all dressed in their Sunday best. The mural glowed behind them in the golden light. Sheriff Frank gave a small speech. "This diner fed us when the flood came, when hope was thin. It's more than a building. It's what we become when we care." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. As the ceremony ended, music began, a local band playing an old folk tune. People danced, laughed, clapped along. Sarah and Emily sat on the diner steps, watching the lights flicker in the dusk. Buddy lay between them, his head resting on Emily's knee. "He's older," Emily said softly. Sarah smiled. "So am I." They laughed, the sound blending with the hum of life around them. Later that night, when the last guests had gone and the diner was quiet, Sarah walked to the mural, her reflection merged with the painted bird. "Thank you," she whispered, though she wasn't sure to whom. Earl Thompson, perhaps, or the diner itself. She turned off the lights, one by one, leaving only the glow of the neon bluebird outside. Rust Creek slept under a gentle spring breeze, and in the soft hum of the night, the bluebird sang, not from its sign, but from every home it had touched. In the quiet glow of dawn over Rust Creek, as the first light touched the sign of the Bluebird Commons, something holy seemed to linger. Not the thunderous kind of miracle that splits the sky, but the tender, everyday one that hides inside a kind word, a shared meal, a second chance. Sarah's story reminds us that God's miracles don't always arrive with trumpets or angels. Sometimes they come in the form of a small courage, a woman who refuses to give up, a diner that feeds the hungry, a heart that forgives and chooses love again. Perhaps that is what faith truly is, not waiting for heaven to descend, but building a little piece of it right where we stand. Every plate served, every smile offered, every act of kindness is a prayer made visible. And maybe, just maybe, the bluebird still sings, not from its sign, but through every person who believes that compassion can heal what the world has broken. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below about a bluebird moment in your own life, a time when grace appeared in small, unexpected ways. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of faith, love, and the quiet miracles hidden in ordinary days. May God bless you, keep you safe, and remind you that His light shines even in the smallest corners, especially where love still chooses to stay.